Hello YouTube, welcome to a, albeit late, State of the Games video for Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen for March of 2015. Both of these titles saw some rather substantial updates in this past month. Now, the lateness of this video is partially due to some technical difficulties on my end, combined with works picking up. It always does about this time of year, so I've been a little bit more busy. But let's look at Elite Dangerous up first with the introduction of 1.2, the Wings update. And to summarize this update very shortly, it is, well, there's good, there's bad, and there's just some downright ugly. And we're going to go into all three of those factors here. Let's start out with kind of the good aspects that's happened in the past month here. There was just, I believe, this past Tuesday, the release of the Mac Beta client, which I've downloaded and tested on my somewhat older MacBook Pro now. And it runs, not substantially very well. We're talking on a late 2011 MacBook Pro, quad-core, 2600 series, i7, 16 gigs of RAM, but I mean the AMD 6770M graphics card is, well, I get about 25-30 frames per second on low settings. Conversely, I was getting 50 frames a second whenever I boot into Windows via Boot Camp and run the game on the Windows partition. So that's just a kind of, I guess you'd say, example between the two. Also, the announcement that Elite Dangerous will be coming to Xbox One. Some people within the PC Master Race don't like that. I really don't have anything for or against it because it looks like the Xbox players will be affecting the larger universe, but we probably won't see them. They'll be kind of in their own self-contained pockets or instances. So I really don't have a problem with that either. I think that's good. Anything that brings in more players, more sales, more revenue to continue development of the game, I really don't have a problem with. And then today, this is April the 2nd, I know I'm a little bit late here, was announced, or at least started showing up, that Elite Dangerous is available on Steam, which will gain a whole lot more exposure. Now, there's probably a lot of people who said, well, should have been on Steam initially, but I think they probably were more concerned with Kickstarter backers, early backers, things of that nature, and therefore keeping more of the revenue without having to go through Steam's kind of early development, green light workshop type situations. It's now out, established. They can go through the normal Steam distribution channels. Great. Anything that adds more exposure brings in more players to the game, and therefore developmental revenue and things of that nature. No problems with whatsoever. Those are all great, fantastic developments. Also, in this update, we basically got the introduction of a party system and allows you and up to 3 of your friends to form a wing of 4 ships and go gallivanting across the galaxy doing a number of occupations together. The occupations also got a massive rebalance. Trading has pretty much remained where trading has always been, but now you can do it in a group, and you get rewarded for doing so in the form of a trade voucher that you then cash in at the station, and these are trade dividends paid on top of your standard profit. It's not deducted from your profits and then spread amongst your wingmen. It is added to additionally. It is essentially a form of quantitative easing in-game because the credits to do so are produced from the ether by the stations. So it does enable you to, say, squad up a newer player, let's say in a Hauler or a Type 6, and if the rest of you are in Type 9s or Anacondas, you can get them an extra 100 to 150,000, maybe even a little bit more than that, per trade run on a good route. So it helps players who want to maybe help out their friends who are just joining to the game or newer players to the game, essentially grind or get more gear a little bit faster. Not substantially faster, but a little bit faster. Also, this is the first carrot that I've seen that actually encourages at least private group, but really open play. You can't run in Wings in solo mode. So therefore, to derive any advantage from doing so, you're going to have to at least do it in a private group, if not in open play together. And I think that's the incentive that is needed to draw more people out of solo play into basically open play and engage with the greater community in some way or another, or find people within the community in which to engage with, because it is now rewarded for doing so. And they've also hinted that they may be looking at separating solo versus open play save files at some point in the future. Some of the beta tests, when they copied over accounts and things of that nature, look like they may be able to do that at a later date and time. So they're investigating making those 2 different saves. I think that would be a good thing, because as it stands right now, the open play mechanics can just be gamed. And you see that a lot with the community goals, and I'll go into that later on, again, with the bad. But the community goals also saw a substantial overhaul, as in they now paid out substantially higher bonuses. They had smuggling, they had competing community goals. So you could choose whether to do the goals for one faction versus another faction that were fighting in that war. There's now an Imperial action going on like that you could choose to support one of 2 groups within the Empire when it comes to slaves. So the idea that you now have fighting for and against in these community goals, wonderful additions. However, now we're going to kind of get into... Oh, I guess I should say that the other good things about the wing mechanics are you can deploy wing beacons. It's much easier for your wingmen to drop in on your instance from your frame shift wakes if you get interdicted. You can target your friends' targets, see who they're targeting. And additionally to this, you can follow them into supercruise or hyperspace. If you're close enough behind, it'll automatically charge your drive and jump you to your destination. All of those, very, very, very good things. Great, wonderful. Now let's get into the bad and community goals. No transparency. All the mechanics of who wins and fought in the Battle of Lu is done so behind smokes and mirrors on the back end with absolutely no visual feedback given to the broader community other than some very vaguely determined stories on the Galnet newsfeed in-game. What I mean by this is most of the people I knew fought for the Federation because of the combat missions. The combat missions completed to Tier 9 very, very quickly, gave out a lot more credits, a lot more bonuses, and the Federation ended up losing it because there was these smuggling and competing bring cargo to a station goal that more people did for the Crimson State group, and therefore the Crimson State group ended up ultimately winning the fight because more of those goals were completed, even though those goals were only completed to the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th tiers, whereas the combat goals for the Federation were completed up to like Tier 9. So how all this affects the overall fight needs to be more visually represented somewhere in the game, whether it's on a control panel, whether it's in station starport services for the system, whether it's in the system status menu screen in the HUD. We need to be able to see who's winning, what's going on, without there being all these smoke and mirrors. There needs to be some sort of visual feedback as far as that goes. Another thing that was really bad was the way in which these new ships, the Fer-de-Lance and the Vulture, were released. Initially, their prices were way, way too high. The Fer-de-Lance initially released at around 100 million credits. It was therefore, or shortly thereafter in an update, the price was knocked down to about 50 million credits, where frankly it should be. The other ship, though, the Vulture, went from being 20 million credits, which I think it was probably a little overpriced at that point, but it was reduced to 5, actually under 5 million credits. And the ship is just way too overpowered to be at that price point. Its shields are damn near that of a Python's. And the Python shields were pretty beefy and had to be nerfed in the first place. And a little ship that small, that maneuverable, just shouldn't be able to equip shield cell boosters and shield cell banks and tank damage from multiple ships for an extended period of time. You know, multiple high-level ships carrying level 3 beams, level 4 cannons and plasma accelerators is just... it's ridiculous. The shielding on the Vulture needs to be cut at least in half, if not by 60%. It needs to be around a third to 40% of what its current value is. There's no way the shield on the Vulture should be stronger than that of a Clipper, a dropship, a Python, and even starting to borderline up there. I guess it's not quite as strong as an Anaconda, but still. The ship is just way, way, way overpowered right now because of its shields. Furthermore, the introduction of these shield boosters and hull reinforcement packs, I don't know. I'm getting to the point where I think that shield cell banks have harmed combat far more than it has improved it. It's now become still a fest of who can equip the most shield cell banks and who runs out of shield cell banks first, or makes a mistake with powering some down, powering some up, and then combine that with shield boosters. It's just ridiculous, frankly. I can understand the point of shield boosters, saying a Type 9 or Type 6 wanting to be able to extend their shields just a little bit longer to get away. I think that was part of the design, but that's not really how they're being utilized. And again, with 4 shield boosters, a Vulture can have the shield strength of a Python, and that's just crazy. The hull reinforcement packs are utterly useless, and the whole subsystem targeting dynamics need to be revisited. The reason being is, as it stands now in my Anaconda, I could be at 80% hull and be dead because they target my power plant, and you can kill a power plant in about 2 shots if you have enough plasma accelerators. What needs to happen, at least with some of the key pieces like that, is your hull needs to be down to 30% before your subsystems, or at least certain subsystems, start taking damage. In particular, subsystems like the power plants on the Python and the Anaconda. Maybe on the case of the Anaconda or the Python, maybe your hull needs to be down to 60% or 50%, and then your power plant can start taking damage. Same thing with an Anaconda. But they need to revisit how that is operated. As it stands right now, it makes no sense to go into PvP combat with a large ship. You're just going to lose it, and lose it quite easily. And therefore, they're not useful. So subsystem targeting needs to be revisited. Maybe, I believe that armor in-game right now actually operates more of a damage reduction. It reduces the amount of damage instead of enhances the number of, for lack of a better term, hit points your ship hull can withstand. Hull reinforcement, I think, actually is what adds additional hull strength, or that number of hit points your hull can take by numerical value. At least from what I can see on ED Shipyard, how accurate that really is, I'm not 100% sure. But then there's just a whole lot of ugly in this update. Wings, for most part, okay, other than a couple of gripes I have. They need to add distance each of your wingmen are in real time up there underneath their names and locations. That would be very, very handy. But the instancing is horrendous. 3 wings could get into an instance at any given time, or a max of 3 wings. This means if you have larger organizations trying to fight each other, somebody's always going to be at a numerical disadvantage. That limit needs to be up to at least 4, so you have the chance of getting 2-on-2 at the very least. Additionally, in matchmaking, a lot of times, if you're in a wing, you just won't see other players in open play. And then you got the problem of half the time that your wingmen drop in on your wake, or say enter the system, and try to drop in your wake after hyperspacing from another system, they get pulled into their own separate instance, especially if the other guys have brought in a couple of wings into that instance, and you find yourself suddenly substantially outnumbered and nothing you can do about it. I've had wingmen jump out into Super Cruise, relock on my nav beacon, come back in, and they're still in their own separate instance. Or they get into an instance where they see you shooting something, but they can't see what you're shooting. They don't see the other guy. So the instancing has been absolutely horrendous since this update, and I hope that they go back and revisit that sooner than later. One other ugly statement that I need to make about Elite Dangerous right now is with the announcement and the way that the announcement of 1.3 Power Play has been handled. Up until this point, it is we're going to release the most substantial content update to the game yet. We're going to revisit further balancing to the various career mechanics, and that's not good enough. Now, they like to underpromise, overdeliver. That's great. But at this point in time, with now the release of the Mac beta and Wings now being essentially a month behind us, we need to know more information about Power Play other than we're going to make an announcement in 3 weeks. No. Players, in order to keep playing, needs to have an idea of what's coming down the pipeline. As in, okay, by the early part of January, after the holidays were over, we got 1.1 in February, 1.2 in March. with the introduction of community goals in 1.1 and wings being in 1.2. That's great. That's all we needed to know. We just need to have a general idea of what this power play is about. Because things are rampantly wild about speculation, from everything from more narrative storyline missions within the Empire and the Federation. They've kind of been setting those up to where the federal president now kind of has a vote of no confidence, and the Imperial Emperor is about to die. And various factions within the Empire basically devolving into a civil war state as various sub-factions fight for overall power and control of the Empire. It could be an overhaul to the economic engine that would kind of create it more from being a spreadsheet in space that varies prices basically 10% plus or minus from the galactic average to a more dynamic economy. And we do know that there's going to be an overhaul to mining that should make it get more profitable and more attractive to actually do in game. But that's it. All they have to say is better missions. Better and overhaul of the mission system. That's what 1.3 is going to be about. If they said that, that's all they have to say. They don't have to go into specific details. They don't have to tell us everything that may or may not end up getting into that release. Just a general idea. And maybe a time frame for delivery. It's looking like it's going to be at least May, possibly June. You know, it would be nice to know these things, because then it gives players the opportunity to judge, well, what do I need to keep on doing? Because a lot of people are kind of tired of the grind, and maybe they want to take a break for a couple of weeks. At the same time, they don't want to get too far behind other people and stuff like that. So it would help people make those decisions. You know, if I knew that this is what's going to go on in 6 to 8 weeks, maybe I want to spend a little bit more time in DCS, especially since there was a Steam sale, and I picked up a couple more cockpits. And maybe I want to spend time practicing to fly an actual MiG-21 that I may or may not purchase at a future date. You know, things like that is something that I will kind of chastise them a little bit about. So, that was kind of Elite Dangerous in the last month or so. Let's now move to Star Citizen. Now, I have to apologize. I'm using some stock footage of 1.0 here. The computer suffered a power outage a couple of days ago, and it caused the solid-state drive to disappear. Now, I did get in some playtime with version 1.2 of Star Citizen, including some multiplayer, but it wasn't very stable when I was trying to play multiplayer last week. And it was well known. There was a lot of red outage notices, yellow outage notices, that there was a lot of instability with multiplayer. And in order to get the solid-state drive to be recognized again, apparently I have to power cycle it according to Crucial's website, and that takes an hour. I've just not found the hour in which to do it yet, so I apologize for having to use some old footage here. But let's talk about Star Citizen's Arena Commander version 1.2, or as I particularly like to call it, World of Space Thunder. That's essentially, to me, what it is now. They introduced the rental equipment credits, which is a very good feature because now it allows somebody who just spent $35, doesn't wish to spend any more money, the ability to compete over time with those people who have spent, say, $150 on a Super Hornet or more, and then maybe another $50 or $60 buying stuff out of the Voyager Direct store. Now, the rental equipment credits you earn by playing co-op Vandal Swarm or multiplayer missions, and you earn it kind of like you do Silver Lions or Silver in World of Tanks, or War Thunder, respectively. And you use this to unlock ships and gear for a limited number of time. Then every so many days you've got to renew that equipment, which I think is acceptable. There are some people who don't like it. They think that once they unlock it and with Rec, it should be permanently unlocked. At this stage in the game, I don't think it matters one way or the other how they end up doing it. If they think that encourages more people to play more often, so be it. I really don't have anything against that per se. And then if you want to permanently unlock it, you have to do so with UEC, which, again, either you got through various stretch goals or you have to buy with real cashy money. But nonetheless, it is still pretty much Arena Command or Arena Combat. They are tweaking how various systems work, like they've announced they're going to overhaul how the gun mount systems work. So like on the Avenger, you have this size 4 gun. Well, maybe you can put a different mount on there and then fit 2 size 2 class guns. Or 2 size, yeah. I'm a little bit confused and hazy over the exact changes. I figured that I would just wait for them to actually implement those changes and then do more of a review on it, because they've said how it's going to work, but I would actually like to see how it's going to work in practice before really saying one way or the other. It's going to give a lot more flexibility, but it can also possibly create a few more problems. Who knows? I'm going to take a wait and see approach on that. But at any rate, the introduction of Rex has been a major addition and a major welcomed addition as far as I'm concerned in Star Citizen. I still have my issues with the flight model and some other things in the game that I'm just not super enthused about. But at least it takes the pay-to-win aspect out of the game, because prior to the release of rental equipment credits, it was pay-to-win. The guy who bought the Hornet or the 325 had a significant advantage over the guy who just had the Aurora. And anybody who says differently is just bullshitting, frankly. So, I'm glad to see that actually go away. It's still pay to have an advantage, don't get me wrong. But at least now people can work up to it. And maybe we start to get an idea of just how many hours of gameplay it is going to derive into advantage. Is spending $115 on a Hornet now only going to be a 15-hour gameplay advantage? If that's so, even I can probably find 15 hours in a week to then earn up to a Hornet. Now, I have a feeling that people who spent the money, there's going to be a significant portion of that crowd who weren't spending money to buy ships to support the game. They're buying ships to have an advantage over the next guy. And those people, I expect there to be much wailing and gnashing of teeth in the future. It also may end up driving some of my future purchases decisions, because, hey, if it's going to take 60 or 100 hours to earn a Constellation, maybe I go look at what I have and sell things around and start the game with a Constellation instead of a 350R. Time will tell as far as those decisions go. So that's basically the video for this month. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.